Welcome to The Quiet Truth, where lay Catholics protect their children. I'm Tom Borak with episode 14, A Pocket Full of Evil. Last time, we talked about the fact that we cannot rely on traditional Catholic education to deal with the peculiar problem of the many evil and foolish cultural messages that are inflicted on our children day after day. These messages are especially difficult to deal with because of the technology, which allows them to be hit from all angles, all the time, in an incredibly attractive way. The clergy and Catholic educators don't have the time or the means to solve this problem for us. If we're going to take care of it, it's going to have to be us, the parents and grandparents, who are trying to raise faith-filled children who take on this job. If you're ready to meet this challenge, perhaps you'll be interested in our how-to guide on raising Catholic children in the middle of the culture of death. There are 3 parts to the job. First, we have to reduce the quantity of foolish and evil messages that our children receive. Second, we have to analyze and explain the errors in the messages that they do receive. And then third, we have to give them as much truth in as many ways as we possibly can. Now, the first part of this task, reducing the quantity of foolish and evil messages, is both the most important and the most difficult. It's the most important because if we don't do that, if we allow our children to be bombarded with as many messages as they can pick up with unrestricted internet access, there simply aren't enough hours in the day to analyze all the errors and correct them. And there's no way that any amount of truth that we can try to spoon feed them is going to compensate for that amount of foolishness and evil. Reducing the quantity of the messages is the most difficult part of the job for several reasons. First of all, it requires a lot of time and effort. You're going to have to be spending more time and more effort supervising your children than your parental peers who aren't aware of this problem. Secondly, you're going to be involved in conflict. Other parents are going to be irritated that you are parenting differently than they are, and they're going to want to come after you. And you may even end up with conflict with your children, especially if your children are a little older and restricting their internet access comes as a surprise to them. And then finally, and perhaps most painful of all, you will notice that your children are noticeably different from their peers. They don't fit in as well. They will be noticeably uncomfortable with casual sex, casual violence, casual dishonesty, blasphemy, and other near occasions of sin. They will fail to pick up on some of the cultural references that their peers, come naturally to. And they will behave differently. They will be more calm, more mature. In short, their peers will not know what to make of them. And I know how painful that can be for a parent or grandparent to see that happening to their children. So don't even think about trying this unless you are filled with faith in God, and full of love for these children, and full of the will, the total commitment to get the job done. All of these will be necessary. But I promise you, if you have the faith, if you have the love, if you have the will, you can and will succeed. Last time I spoke to you about an incident that happened in a Catholic middle elementary school where a supposed internet expert was explaining why all children from a very young age needed to have unrestricted internet access in order to become, modern internet citizens or something. He was absolutely wrong, but he was absolutely a victim of today's culture, which tells everyone that children need unrestricted internet access. So let's get down to the nuts and bolts of it. Rule number 1, do not buy your little child a pocket-sized, 24-hour connection to the world of sin and foolishness. Do not buy an Android phone, an iPhone, or any similar piece of technology that your child can carry around with him or her. Don't do it. Now, this is going to provoke a lot of opposition. Don't try to convert other parents to your point of view. Just make sure you understand that what you're doing is right. And when you run into the inevitable objections, respond to them, at least to yourself, in a way something like this. Objection. But your child needs a cell phone for emergencies. Response. My child is under responsible adult supervision at all times. Objection. But what if the responsible adult has a heart attack? Under those circumstances, my child has my permission to borrow the stricken adult's cell phone and make an emergency call. Objection. What if your daughter wants to go to the mall with her friends? Response. If my daughter wants to go to the mall with her friends, she can go. She can borrow one of her friend's cell phones to ask me to come and pick her up, or we can agree beforehand on a time and a place for a pickup. You know, like her great-great-great-grandparents did. Or she can borrow my cell phone, which is a true cell phone with no texting capability and no internet connection. It's a phone to make phone calls. Objection. But an older child who drives a car absolutely needs a cell phone for safety. Response. A cell phone in the hands of a teenage driver is not a safety feature. It is a constant source of danger. And my child is not going to be driving hundreds of miles through the desert. He's driving to local places, and if he gets a flat tire or any other problem arises that he can't handle, he can get out of the car and walk to the nearest retailer or to the school or to wherever he's going and get help. Objection. So you're going to risk the safety of your child because you're afraid he might make cell phone calls while he's driving. Is that it? Response. Yes. What do you think is more likely? That a teenager driver uses a cell phone and as a result gets in an accident? Or that a teenage driver without a cell phone gets in an accident, finds himself pinned in the car, but still conscious, and then the car slides into a ditch so nobody can see him and nobody can hear his screams? It's pretty clear that the danger of traveling with a cell phone is greater than the danger of traveling without a cell phone. Objection. So you're telling me there's no circumstances under which your teenage driver would need to have a cell phone and you'd let him have it? No, you know, there may be circumstances in which my teenage driver is responsible enough that I'm going to let him drive somewhere where he needs a cell phone as a safety feature. But here's the deal. First of all, if at all possible, it's going to be a true cell phone, not an internet connection, not a game machine, not a text machine, but a cell phone. And secondly, it's only going to be carried in one place in the car, the trunk. Once I catch him with the cell phone in his pocket as he exits the car, or I find it on the dashboard or on the seat next to him, that cell phone is gone, as are his long-distance driving privileges. Objection. But your children, in order to be responsible adults and hold a job in today's society, have to know how to use all the features on a cell phone. Well, I could debate whether or not they need to know how to use all the features on the cell phone. But, okay, let's say that when my child takes his or her first full-time job that he will need to use a cell phone with all the features. He can learn to use all those features in 10 hours in a single weekend. Now that means that if I had allowed the child to have a cell phone from age 8 to age 18 and to use it 8 hours a day, he would have had 29,110 more hours of practice than he really needed. Well, so much for cell phones. Join us next time for Web Safety for Christians or Internet for Faith-Filled Kids. Thank you for your kind attention.